Listen, you know what's really annoying? When you have been decluttering your little heart out and you still feel like you're not getting rid of enough stuff to make a big difference. You still feel like your space is cluttered. So what gives? Like, why isn't your hard work paying off? Today I want to talk about 4 major roadblocks when it comes to getting rid of stuff and how to overcome them. Let's go. Hi guys, it's Laura and I help you live a simpler, happier, more spacious life. And I definitely struggled with this over the years, constantly decluttering and yet still feeling like I was drowning in stuff. But over the years, the light switch flicked on and I realized what the problem, or the problems, plural, were. Okay, let's be honest with ourselves. One of the big reasons that we find it difficult to let go of stuff is because we think we might need it. It's all of that just in case clutter. Just in case it comes in useful someday. Just in case I let it go and then regret it terribly. We are keeping so much stuff that we just don't use because of that fear. And here's the thing with fear, like a lot of it is just to keep you safe, to keep you comfortable, but very often there's no real basis for it. And when you identify it as a fear, when you identify it for what it actually is, sometimes it loses its power, it loses its grip over you. Major Labyrinth vibes there. You have no power over me. Anyone else love that film? But the thing is, if something were truly useful, you would be using it. It is not useful sitting in a drawer somewhere, sitting at the back of a cupboard. And I know you're thinking, as soon as I get rid of it, that's when I'll need it. But will you really? And if you do need it, what could you use instead? I am very guilty of this, thinking that if I get rid of something and then I need it, like it's the end of the world. I will never be able to cope without this thing. But experience has taught me time and time again that if I need something, if I go to use something and I don't have it, I'm pretty creative. I can get pretty inventive when I need to, and I'll just use something else. I will figure out a different way. I will borrow the thing, whatever I need to do to still get the job done. Prime example, got rid of shoes, then tried on an outfit and was like, oh, those shoes would have been perfect with this outfit. You know what I did? I just picked a different pair of shoes. Went on with my life. Another example, though a silly one, years ago, I realized that I did not have a tin opener when I went to open a tin of peas. What did I use instead? Hammer and chisel. Now, obviously, I'm not saying get rid of your tin opener, but what I am saying is that very often we assume something is essential when in reality, we can make it work. If the moment arose where you needed this thing and you did not have that thing, what would you do instead? Brainstorm all of those alternatives and you'll probably find that you can come up with quite a few other things you could do. And suddenly it doesn't seem like such a great idea to give up all of that space for that one little thing that you may or may not use in the future. You will make do. This next one is something that my husband definitely struggles with, and that is thinking that something is not really doing any harm. It's not really taking up that much space. It's okay to just leave it there. And this is particularly true for small, teeny tiny things, particularly papers and things like that, or things that are kept out of the way, in an attic, in a basement. Why waste a lot of time and energy, getting rid of it when really it can just sit there? But then here's the thing. Have you ever really wanted a space for yourself? Have you ever wanted a crafting space? Have you ever wanted a little book nook or a place where you can do some little DIY projects? Or have you ever thought that you wish something were easier? Like, I wish I could pull the car into the garage. I wish it were easier to pull out all of the Christmas decorations and, I didn't have to go digging for them. The reality is that everything has a price. Everything is taking up space that you could use for something else. Everything is making it more difficult for you to do other things. Everything is creating a tripping hazard, a fire hazard, or some other form of safety hazard. Everything is making your future life more difficult, if you ever have to move. So here's the question to ask yourself. How is this thing actually serving me, and what am I sacrificing by letting this thing take up space in my home? And like with all the others, this comes down to being really brutally honest with yourself. Are you leaving it there just because you don't want to deal with it? And listen, in most cases, that's fair enough, because life is already difficult enough without, purposely giving yourself extra things to do that you don't really need to be doing. But what are you giving up. Maybe it's worth the hour or so it would take to declutter that space, reclaim it, and turn it into something wonderful that you can then use from here on out. Yes, it's temporary pain to clear out a space, but long-term gain. Now, hopefully at this stage, the light switch has gone on. You're realizing how much more stuff you can get rid of. You're realizing how the bulk of stuff that you're hanging onto is really holding you back. And another case in which that is true is with sentimental clutter, or things that you are attaching some form of sentiment or emotion to. And what you have to figure out is whether that emotion is primarily positive, like joy, nostalgia, all those kinds of things, or whether it is more guilt. You're hanging on to it because you would feel bad getting rid of it for whatever reason. Someone gave it to you. It's worth a lot of money. It was passed down from generation to generation. Somebody will feel bad if you get rid of it. You're allowing the stuff you own to own you. And speaking from personal experience, I know that a lot of times when I pull sentimental stuff out, some of the stuff I'm looking at thinking, why did I keep this? Don't assign some special reverence to something just because it's sitting in a memory box. Sometimes things are big in the moment, and then some time passes, you've processed that thing, and you no longer need to hang on to the physical representation. Not everything will stay important forever. This is especially true for things that are just sitting in a box that you probably don't look at from one end of the year to the next. How truly special and meaningful are those things if you never look at them, if you never interact with them, if you've just put the lid on the box and shoved it into a deep, dark, dusty corner? Again, I'm not saying just get rid of all of your sentimental stuff, but I am saying to separate out the things that you're really keeping out of a sense of obligation. I've said it many times before and I will say it again, but memories are not in things. They are in your head and your heart. If you get rid of this one object, that doesn't mean that you're automatically going to erase all of your memories of your wonderful grandmother. Plus, memories can be preserved in a different way. You can talk to other people about them. You can journal about them. You can take a photograph of the item so that you still do have that reminder of the person or of a particular place or time or event. But you don't necessarily need to keep the physical item. If you're keeping it purely out of a sense of guilt, get rid of it. The guilt will pass very quickly, trust me. And here's something that you maybe haven't even considered. It's what I like to call invisible clutter. It's all of that stuff that is taking up space in your home that you don't even see on a regular basis because it's just become part of the fixtures and fittings. We become blind to those items over time. Very often the reality is that if you are not interacting with something on a regular basis, it just tends to blend into the background. It's like all of those phone numbers that you have on your phone, you speak to the same 5 people all of the time, but your contact list is hundreds of people long, people you will never interact with or deal with again. They're all taking up space, but you don't even notice that they're there. Usually this is decorative items. Sometimes it can be cords and cables. Sometimes it's even labels on things. They're the things that make a room look and feel cluttered, even if we can't quite put our finger on why or how. So here are 2 ways that I have found to overcome this, and you will be amazed, particularly at this first one. Try it. You will see what I mean. If there's a space that you feel is cluttered or just isn't quite right for some reason, step back, take a picture of that space, and then look at the picture. I can almost guarantee that you will immediately be able to spot at least one thing that is out of place or that is clutter or for some reason it's just not working. It just gives you a more objective view. It's a slightly different perspective. That's what makes it easier to see those problem areas, particularly cords and cables. Now, if you've done that and it's still not quite working for you, you still can't quite pinpoint what it is that's driving you crazy, something you can do then, something that I have done, is to actually start taking things out of the space. I'm not saying you have to get rid of it forever, but just take one thing out of the room or clear one shelf and see how much of a difference that makes. Does the room suddenly feel bigger, lighter, brighter, more airy? Do you suddenly feel more calm when you walk into that space? And this might be a case of trial and error. You might have to remove one thing, then remove another thing, but eventually you will stumble on that thing that once it's gone from the space makes that area feel so much better. It's why I always completely clear out a space when I'm decluttering it. Yes, it's a pain. Yes, I hate doing it, but I have found time and time again that the results are so worth it because I start then with a clean slate. I can look at a space with a fresh pair of eyes. Start taking things out, particularly those things that you don't interact with on a regular basis, the artwork, the decorative items, and see how the space feels. Now you might be wondering how you will know when you've got rid of enough stuff. Marie Kondo calls this the click point, the point at which you just know that you have the right amount of things. And let me tell you, it is not about just figuring out what sparks joy, what you love, and getting rid of everything else. No, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. So if you want to know when you have reached the right amount of stuff, go ahead and watch this video. I explain it very clearly in that. Everyone has a different threshold, a different tolerance for clutter. This will help you figure out what yours is. Until then, Gurav, Mila Mahagwev, August Veki Slán!